And hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. I'm Marcio Sutcliffe with Luis Scott Vargas. Joining me, we are happy and proud to bring you coverage of the finals. It has been a long road for these two players, both from Dex-based teams. There's Dex Army versus the Dex third team. We've got Lucas, Esper, Berthoud. He's playing against Marcio, Carvalho. It could be fast. I'm going to warn you right now. This is Mardu vehicles. We've seen these matches go pretty quickly, even a best of 5. So get comfortable, get everything you need. It is time for the finals here from Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Aether Revolt. I'm Marcio Sutcliffe in the booth with Hall of Famer Luis Scott Vargas, and we are ready for the finals. It all comes down to this between Lucas, Esper, Berthoud. You take a look at him from Brazil. His opponent on the other side of the table, Marcio, Carvalho from Portugal. Now these two players are on two different teams as it pertains to our team competition, Dex Army for Marcio Carvalho and Dex Third for Lucas, but they did test together for the event.
They did, and even though they're both playing vehicles, they do have slightly different lists.
That's right. They shared information and tested, but let's take a look at what we have here in the early stages. Just while zooming into the feature match table, there's already been quite a bit of action from both players here. Looks like no 2-drop, though, for Lucas this time. And Marcio with the veteran motorist to help smooth out his draw, though it doesn't look like it has a great attack at the moment.
No, Marcio actually kept a 5-land hand with a NALAAR and veteran motorist, but part of the reason to do that is that veteran motorist can scry and find you some more action. Marcio actually left 2 cards on top here.
Marcio went 2 cards on top, but there was a shock, so not all of the mana left fallow there for Lucas's second turn as he works his way towards his third turn where he has his own copy of NALAAR. Now his board looks a bit better than it did a turn ago, doesn't it? And let's see what Marcio comes up with. Well, he's got a tap land and a scrap heap scrounger. Of note, no vehicles on the battlefield yet.
No, neither player has seemed to have drawn a Heart of Kiran, though both players are actually doing a pretty good job of filling the board.
How about this one? Here's Gideon, ally of ZENDIKAR. No good attacks for Lucas, so he's just going to pass the turn back, but that Gideon actually looks quite safe at the moment.
Well,
he may have spoken too soon. This was, of course, the risk that Lucas took. He's now going to lose his Gideon because of unlicensed disintegration. And Marcio says, you know what? I'll happily trade off my Scrap Heap Scrounger for your NALAAR, so I'm just going to send that in too. Lucas declines that trade and takes 3 damage. So a big swing in Marcio's favor there.
That reduces some of the advantage that Lucas has, but one of the interesting things about that interaction, the Gideon and unlicensed disintegration, is there's actually some thought to just plussing Gideon there, just so unlicensed disintegration on your Thopter token doesn't end up with you losing Gideon. But, well, as it turns out, Marcio did have the disintegration, Lucas did make a Knight Ally, and Gideon is not long for this board. Yeah,
we saw a similar situation in our second semifinal match come up as well. When you combine any type of flying creature plus unlicensed disintegration to kill a Gideon, and it can be a tough spot to be in, though we've seen the players pretty much just run out the Gideons anyway.
I do actually like Lucas' spot here, given that he's got that clue token ready to go, and he's done a pretty good job of drawing action himself. Both players had somewhat land-heavy opening hands, and they've managed to draw mostly spells from there.
Not a lot of licenses floating around this battlefield, and the disintegration is flowing here. That was an unlicensed disintegration for Lucas as he takes down the veteran motorist, which clears the way for an attack for 5 damage. Ooh, and there's a Heart of Kiran to follow up as well with his other damage. It looks, or with his other card in hand. It looks like Lucas is taking the reins here and maybe putting himself in a good position to take down this first game.
Yeah, Lucas is running away with this right now because Scrap Heap Scrounger unable to block. Marcio without any removal at the ready. He's already used his 1 copy of unlicensed disintegration, and then Ben and Benner's Apprentice not going to go too far against Heart of Kiran. Though it does keep back the 2/2s unless NALAAR wants to use her ability of throwing an artifact at any potential blocker.
There's that clue that was seen on the battlefield for multiple turns there for Lucas. He's finally going to spend the mana to crack it, though. Marcio seems to have paused him here and says, before you get that card, I may want to act though I won't. So go ahead and draw it. Interesting for Marcio. What is he representing by doing that?
Maybe a removal spell, but...
You saw him kind of thumb his lands there, though. He doesn't actually have one in hand.
No, doing it in response to the clue is not something that you would need to do anyway.
He's just, I guess, keeping Lucas in check. But in the meantime, the Scrap Heap Scrounger is going to crew up Heart of Kirin, which is going to attack for 4 damage, a full third of Marcio's life total. He once again feigns as if he could have something by thinking, but you know, once you don't kill the Heart of Kirin, I think Lucas was hip to the game here and knows that that Marcio doesn't have
At that point,
anything.
Lucas just does. There's no reason to play around something like Unlicensed Disintegration. Marcio clearly would have cast it.
Well, I don't know how much this changes things, but that was a Gideon ally of Zendikar off the top for Marcio. Is it too late?
It's going to be tough for Marcio to get back into this. Gideon is certainly one of the more impactful cards he could draw, but making a Knight token doesn't really solve the Heart of Kirin problem, and making an emblem is still going to be a little difficult for Marcio to race with, because Lucas has a lot of creatures on the ground he can throw in the way.
He's going to play the Gideon, make an emblem. He does have 3 creatures. He's going to attack for 4 damage with a Scrap Heap Scrounger. Now Lucas has a lot of flexibility here. He's got 13 life that he can use as a resource, and he has plenty of blockers if he wants to throw, you know, a Thraben Inspector or something under it. Even could multi-block and try to kill the Scrap Heap Scrounger if he really wanted. So a lot of options here for Lucas, and he's just going to leverage that life total advantage that he's got and take the 4.
Despite these decks being aggro decks, Unlicensed Disintegration and Shock don't do tons of direct damage. It's not like they have 12 burn spells in them. So you can fall to 9 and be pretty confident you're not going to get burned out. You will have to die to combat, which Lucas has a lot of ways to stop.
Lucas is kind of lining up what his attack might look like. He knows that Heart of Kirin's going to go in. Does he have anything else to do before that? He's got a Thraben Inspector, so he could consider playing the Thraben Inspector and just immediately getting his clue token card off of it to see if it opens up any other options for him.
You could also crew Heart of Kirin with Scrap Heap Scrounger, then use NALAAR to throw the Scrounger and the clue token at Marcio's 2 blockers and attack. And if Lucas doesn't have a removal spell, which actually, given that it's game 1, can't have Fatal Push.
Marcio, you mean?
Or sorry, Marcio can't have Fatal Push. Lucas could attack for lethal here.
Yeah, so it looks like he actually has the win on the board at this point. Remember, the players know the deck list. Marcio has no Fatal Pushes in his main deck. He only has them in the sideboard. And here we go. Let's start throwing these artifacts around.
Yeah. And this is also still. Oh, actually, yeah, it is still lethal if you use NALAAR to pump the Heart of Kirin with her ability.
Yes.
Or actually just exactly lethal without, or 1 over without that. Could also use Pia to get an extra point in.
That's right, and it's plenty. So that is Lucas, Esper, Berthoud taking down the first game here. And like I said, hang on to your seats, kiddos, because this one could be quick. That one wasn't even the quickest game that we've had. We're going to be playing a best of 5 match here. We've got another non-sideboarded game coming up for you in just a few minutes. We'll be right back after these messages.
Put what you've learned from watching the Pro Tour into action and compete to become the champion of your favorite game store. Test your skills and your new standard deck at Game Day. Top finishers are awarded special Game Day prizes, including Full Art Premium promo cards and a champion playmat for the winner. Aether Revolt is now available in Magic Duels. Build endless deck combinations with more than 1,000 unique cards. Play through hours of story with over 50 campaign missions. Play Magic Duels free today on Xbox One, Steam, iPad, and iPhone.
feature match area here in Dublin, Ireland. The last time we were here, Luis, for the Pro Tour, it was Pro Tour Theros, where two teammates also faced off in that one. It's also where you got inducted to the Hall of Fame, is that correct? Was
True.
it Theros? Yeah.
Myself, Ben Stark, and William Huey Jensen. And then,
Heck of a class, by the way.
yeah, I'd say we're assembled a pretty good team draft squad because Ben and you were both good at draft. And then I remember, I was in the booth for that. Jeremy Dezzani against Pierre Dagen playing Mono Blue Devotion.
Mm-hmm. And now we have two teammates facing off once again.
Decidedly not monocolor decks.
No. In fact, 4 color decks for each of these players, though primarily 3. And a turn 2 play here for Marcio, who did have to take a mulligan this game. He's got a Heart of Kirin, and you can see how powerful being on the play is here, as Lucas also has his own Heart of Kirin, but Marcio gets to strike first, and well, so far, Luis, he has assembled your recipe for success, which is playing a 2 and then a 2 and a 1, although the 1 drop was missing from that ingredient list. Here is a nice one for Lucas. I'm really curious to see what Lucas does here as well. He's got a veteran motorist. He can attack for 5, or he can leave it back to block. Feels risky. Oh, he's got more. He's also got Thraben Inspector.
Well,
he's going to leave it back to block.
One of the advantages of leaving it back to block is if Marcio doesn't have a veteran motorist or an unlicensed disintegration, then that Heart of Kirin will blank Marcio's attacks.
Quick question. What if he does have an unlicensed disintegration? Which he does, by the way.
As it turns out, he does. You take a lot of damage, but you're going to have a hard time beating unlicensed disintegration anyway, so playing to try to win the games where you don't have one, or where Marcio doesn't have one, I think makes a lot of sense. Marcio deciding now whether he wants to use energy from Aether Hub or take one off Spire of Industry.
Yeah, he is able to leave up shock by doing it this way. And he's just going to pass the turn back. He knows that he can fire that shock off on the veteran motorist whenever he pleases. And this game's almost over.
Well, Lucas does have a good follow-up. He does have an Aether Sphere Harvester.
Okay.
And because Marcio doesn't have another unlicensed disintegration, that does let him block the Heart of Kirin and gain some life.
Well, that shock looks pretty good, though.
It does, but if Marcio either has to use the shock on the motorist, in which case he can't use it to win the Aether Sphere Harvester combat, or the motorist will make the Harvester a 4/6. So right now we're actually kind of at an impasse. I think Marcio does have the life total advantage, but Lucas has a better board here.
Might have a quick close one. You know, the life total's 7-20, but things have actually stalled out a little bit here.
And that favors Lucas because he has 2 cards in hand, and he has 4 lands, in play, and 2 clues. So he's got a lot of resources to work with. Marcio, he has his own clue, but Marcio's on a mulligan. I think that an impactful turn from either of these players could break this game wide open, but as the board currently sits, it's not looking that bad for Lucas, despite a lower life total.
Taking a look at Lucas's hand here, he's got a Gideon and a Heart of Kirin, as well as a land. He still has the 2 energy left over from the Aether Sphere Harvester as well. And Gideon goes immediately to the graveyard. This is Lucas making an emblem with Gideon. What do you think about that, Luis?
So it makes Aether Sphere Harvester even bigger, which means that, again, if Marcio doesn't have unlicensed disintegration, he just has no good attacks. And it makes it so those Thraben Inspectors can rumble a little bit better, though they still lose in combat to Thalia and still don't have great blocks against Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Yeah, not a great draw there from Marcio. He found another copy of Heart of Kirin. But he cracks the clue. And what did he find with that? Adventurer's Apprentice.
Yeah, the 2/3 adds to the board. But that Aether Sphere Harvester is just brick-walling Marcio. The fact that it blocks Marcio's biggest attacker and gains 4 life means that Lucas is effectively at 10 if Marcio wants to commit to an attack.
And like you said, Lucas still with those 2 clue tokens sitting there, just ready to keep the cards flowing into Lucas's hand.
Thalia is going to be annoying as the game progresses because Lucas, none of his creatures can block the turn he plays them. So he would love to find an answer to Thalia before he has to play any other creatures, but still think Lucas, as long as Marcio doesn't draw unlicensed disintegration, that Harvester is going to go a long way.
Heart of Kirin. And an Aether Hub, though. It does enter the battlefield tapped. Next to Thalia. A land off the top for Marcio, and this one could be slipping away slowly. It's still a stall, but Lucas gets to start attacking next turn with his Heart of Kirin, does he not?
He can offer not even a trade because of the getting him. He can offer just 5 points in, though he doesn't.
He does need something to crew it.
He doesn't have a great crewing option. So Marcio looking at what happens if he attacks with like everything. He like crews the Heart of Kirin off of, say, Thalia or Scrap Heap Scrounger, and then attacks with a 1-2, a 2-3, the Heart of Kirin, and a 3-2. It doesn't end up going great because the Harvester eats the Heart of Kirin, Lucas goes to 10, and one of the Thraben Inspectors blocks, say, the 1-2, and Lucas takes 5 going to 5, so you end up throwing away a Heart of Kirin and a Thraben Inspector for a point of damage.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, Carvalho is looking at these options because he has a second copy of Heart of Kirin. He knows he can lose that if he wants. Ooh, Lucas had found an answer for that Thalia, like you mentioned. It was a shock.
Yeah, shock, pretty good play, and exactly why Thalia is maybe not at her strongest right now is that the more shocks that get played, the weaker Thalia tends to be. This gives Lucas a bit of an edge. If he finds any creature, he can maybe start attacking here. He's found 2 more Hearts of Kirin.
Oh, no.
So that actually didn't work out great for Lucas in the sense that both players are sitting there with essentially no cards in hand because the Hearts of Kirin are just not dying anytime soon.
Yeah. Is there any way that Lucas just starts attacking with the Aether Sphere Harvester? Is that another Heart of Kirin?
It's another Heart of Kirin.
Both players have 2 copies of Heart of Kirin in their hand.
Lucas is getting close to wanting to attack with Aether Sphere Harvester, yes. He would love to just have like 1 more creature. So if he attacks with that, no, then he only has. Then he can't. The thing is, the problem is he can't crew Heart of Kirin on defense. Then,
right?
So he really needs something else in order to do so.
Okay, so he's just going to be patient.
Worth noting that Marcio has Needle Spires too, if that becomes relevant.
Yeah, I think that's the math he's figuring out right now. We know his hand certainly isn't factoring in to his decision making on this level, but.
Ooh, is that an unlicensed disintegration? It is. All right, so that means that Lucas has a potential for a pretty nasty turn if Marcio goes for it here. Though Lucas seems content just to pass.
Another land off the top for Marcio. Not going to get the job done here. He did have the quicker start and has kept Lucas at bay thanks to the life total discrepancy. Lucas just needs to find a creature. He just hasn't seen any in a while. He's got the board stabilized and even has a removal spell in hand, but here we go. How about an Inventor's Apprentice?
That's a nice one because now Lucas can crew Heart of Kirin and descend in for 5 there.
Yeah, this is going to start adding up very, very quickly. Is Marcio going to start chump blocking? No, he was just pump faking there. He just wanted to see if you'd use any removal on it.
Crew the Heart of Kirin just to see, try to bait out a removal spell. Lucas
I love that.
Did not fall for that.
With 2 of them in hand.
Yeah, it's a pretty safe play.
If he could trade that Heart of Kirin for one of Lucas's removal spells, he'd be thrilled with that at this point. Okay, not the worst here. Another Thraben Inspector is going to get him a clue, which he's going to immediately sacrifice, and finds another land on top of his library.
Marcio's running out of steam very quickly here.
He is.
He's got heart, but he needs gas.
He's got too much heart, as it seems.
Ooh, Scrap Heap Scrounger. So it might be time for that Aether Sphere Harvester to start getting in there.
Now he's going to start just cashing in these Heart of Kirin so that he can at least use the ones that are stuck in his hand.
Another land for Marcio.
Yeah, he has really drawn poorly this game. back-to-back Heart of Kirin into a bunch of lands.
I think there's a really good chance that Lucas wants to start attacking with Aether Sphere Harvester, and the reason being he's getting to a commanding enough board position that you don't want to lose to something like double Unlicensed Disintegration, just burn spells out of nowhere. And if you can get a hit in for 4 with the Aether Sphere Harvester with lifelink, then that puts him out of that range.
Marcio's going to take another hit down to 10. A lot of lands for both players. These decks operate on relatively few lands, 4 or maybe sometimes 5 out of the board, but they've both drawn a lot. And there's another Thalia.
Thalia means a little less at this stage in the game.
Unlicensed Disintegration is going to actually just kill Thalia here.
Yeah.
Lucas did not want to see that card on the battlefield, apparently, and Marcio's going to fall to 7.
Lucas could have gone for lethal by killing Heart of Kirin and just crewing both his vehicles and attacking, but I think he's still in quite good shape regardless.
Yeah, he seemed concerned with Thalia there. Two Heart of Kirin's in hand still for Lucas, but he's got the board in hand. He also won our first game. And once again, Marcio is just going to chump block with his Heart of Kirin. That emblem from Gideon so many turns ago doing serious work here for Lucas. Toolcraft Exemplar was the pickup for Marcio, and of course he has another Heart of Kirin to add to the battlefield here as well.
See if the third heart will do the trick.
It will not.
I suspect not. I think that Lucas at this point is not likely to die to really anything but Marcio drawing multiple Unlicensed Disintegration in a row, and it's not even clear if that will do it.
And at some point he can just attack with the Aether Sphere Harvester and gain 4 life and put himself out of that range.
I think at some point this is now.
Yes.
I think now is that point, especially since Lucas drew another Aether Sphere Harvester, so still have one back on defense. Don't see very many vehicles games where both players have like 8 lands at play.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but here we are. So I think we have Lucas doing math, trying to decide, can I just go for it here?
Well, he's looking at worst case scenarios because this attack is good on board. You know, you attack with a 4/6 Aether Sphere Harvester and a 5/5 Heart of Kirin. Marcio has to chump the Heart of Kirin. You gain 4 life going to 10 and are not really facing close to lethal on the backswing. What concerns Lucas is what if Marcio did draw an Unlicensed Disintegration and just picks off like your Aether Sphere Harvester?
Sure. And he's going to be relieved to see that that is not the case.
Nope.
As once again, Heart of Kirin now must chump block the other Heart of Kirin just to keep Marcio alive. And another Aether Sphere Harvester. And you know what? Marcio's seen enough. He's going to pack him in. And this is game number 2 going to Lucas, Esper, Berthoud. We could have a quick one here. We're going to start transitioning over to our sideboarded games here. And if Lucas can pick up any one of the next 3 games, he is going to be our Pro Tour Aether Revolt champion. Now, I mentioned it a minute ago. We're playing a best 3 out of 5 here, Luis.
Right.
This is how we do it in the top 8. It helps reduce the variance a little bit of the game and make sure that you know, as much skill goes into winning as possible. And one of the things that you do when you figure that kind of thing out is you say, well, how many of the games should be sideboarded? Normally we play best 2 out of 3. Well, it ends up being that the first 2 don't have their sideboard, and then the last up to 3 have theirs. So why don't we take a look at these sideboards for our players as we start to transition in that direction. Here is Lucas's sideboard.
I like his sideboard quite a bit.
He can go pretty big here.
For the mirror, yeah. Between the Sky Sovereigns, the Release the Gremlins, and then the removal spells like Fatal Push and Sky Whaler Shot, Fragmentize, I think Lucas has a very good plan. I also love the 1 Inventor's Apprentice in the sideboard. That's just some spice.
What is that doing there?
Hanging out.
Just couldn't find another spot, or I mean, that's not normally the type of card that you see.
It is not. It is not it's not a very narrow or specific card. It also, there's not that many matchups where you like need an additional 1-drop specifically, but he's got it in the sideboard presumably to shore up whatever matchup needs his 10th or 11th 1-drop. I guess it would be 12th actually. He's got 3 Inventor's Apprentice in the main. And I do like the Needle Spiders in the sideboard as well. It is always I think a pretty good sign if you're siding in lands, because you do need to make concessions to the fact that you're siding in 2 5-drops. Release the Gremlins also cost 5 sometimes.
What about Marcio's sideboard? It looks a little different.
Marcio does have the 2 Release the Gremlins and 1 Sky Sovereign. He doesn't have quite as many options as Lucas does, but Shock, Fatal Push, Skywalker Shot also work as well. So Marcio, we also saw him side in Archangel Avacyn. So instead of a Sky Sovereign, he's got Archangel Avacyn as a 5-drop. Powerful 5-mana spells are pretty good when both players are boarding in cards like Release the Gremlins, like Fatal Push, like Skywalker Shot, and Shock, because you end up with games where both players can just kill each other's stuff, and then Sky Sovereign or Avacyn can dominate.
And one of the things that we haven't seen, by the way, are the players in this mirror match going too slow on the control route. Cards like Chandra and Fumigate haven't seen play.
No, those cards don't line up well against, but they both, in fact, don't line up well against vehicles specifically, and against the way these decks tend to curve out.
Okay, so the players also, I mentioned this before, but they do get a chance to look and know their opponent's deck list. And that means that they're going to get a chance to really, tailor their plan as best they can. Taking a look back out on the floor by the tournament. Lots of drafting happening. I mean, what else would you do? Oh, look at this. Let's look over Ben Stark's shoulder. What do you got there, Ben? Oh, he doesn't like this pack. Welder Automaton? That's what you're going to take?
I actually saw Ben draft.
This is his whole deck. It looks like.
I saw Ben draft most of this deck. It didn't look particularly inspiring.
Well, he's got 2 Outland Wars and a Rishkar's Expertise, so and a smile on his face. What could you ask for more than that? This is good stuff. There's Eric Froelich back there. He's happy about his deck, I assure you.
And plenty of other things too.
Indeed. Yeah, this is these guys are just having fun. Their work weekend is over at this point. Having not made it to the top 8, they get to just relax and have fun. And well, it turns out the way that they work and the way that they have fun happen to be the same thing. It's called Magic the Gathering. Highly recommend it if you haven't tried it out yet.
Looks like deck building in progress here. Arlax against Ben Friedman, or rather on the same team as Ben Friedman, with Scott Lipp, with some of the Mass Drop East and West team members. And looks like an English draft.
Team England over here. There's the big rig. Neil Rigby. Well, he's still facing off against Alexander Hayne, it looks like.
Yeah.
That is a tough competition. But back to business here in the feature match area. They're having fun out there. And this is big business here, as right now we've got Lucas Esper from Brazil. You take a look at Lucas here. 2 games to the good. If he wins just one of the next 3 games of Magic against Marcio Carvalho, he will be our champion. Now, on the other side of the table, Marcio, the last time we saw him at this level was at the World Championships in Seattle. Marcio ended up finishing second there. I'm assuming he's getting a little sick of finishing second at these high-level events, and he would love to rattle off 3 and pull the stunning comeback to steal this one back from Lucas and get a little redemption, get a little of that back. That could not have felt good. Remember how long and crazy that match was, too. I didn't think I was going to survive that one, and I was in the booth.
Oh, I was there. I was right next to you.
Yeah, I was the one leaning on you.
Yeah. Well, that match, actually, I couldn't have even told you how long it was afterwards, because it was just all action, and I do love covering matches like that. We had a 1 hour and 6 minute game, just to remind you, Louis. I know you may have blacked out some of that in there, but yeah, and I make that joke really to say Marcio was playing those games. He must have been completely spent after that. And while it's still an amazing finish at second, I know he wants to get back and hold a trophy, but at the end of the day, and he certainly has his work cut out for him here in the finals against Lucas. Although Lucas is going to make it a little easier for him here by mulliganing. And Marcio, a very solid hand. He's got Shock for turn 1 for if Lucas plays a Toolcraft Exemplar.
Which he's going to. Ooh, are those all lands in a
Toolcraft? 5-land Toolcraft Exemplar hand on the draw. You do get a scry. His hand's, I do believe, close to keepable, but my inclination would be to mulligan it, but I think it is close, because if you scry into a spell, and then, especially now that you have more 5-drops in your deck, Veteran Motorist is the perfect card.
Probably the best card he could scry into there. That helps him set up more action going forward. You mentioned it, though, Shock kind of destined to hit that Toolcraft Exemplar. What's a turn 2 play? Well, it's a Scrap Heap Scrounger. Not bad there for Marcio Carvalho. And now any lands are going to get pushed to the bottom, and then Lucas can kind of figure out where he wants to go as far as spells go.
Looks like he kept one.
Interesting, Lucas is going to go ahead and trade off. We do not see the Scrap Heap Scroungers come back nearly as often in this matchup as you'd think.
Yeah, but especially since...
that was a potential mana consideration too there, isn't it, Luis?
Yeah, it's possible that Marcio is less likely to be able to play a spell because he did actually attack before casting Veteran Motorist, and now his Spire of Industry
Look at this.
no longer on.
It's costing him an energy, the one shot from the Aether Hub, just to be able to cast it. And I actually saw Marcio shake his head there. I think maybe he wishes he would have played this pre-combat.
Well, it also cost him being able to play Needle Spiders this turn. So he would have been able to play a tap land instead. But
wow.
Marcio scryed into P and NALAAR and Heart of Kiran, which is, well, I guess P and Kiran NALAAR in a sense.
Yeah.
And that is a very good combination of cards there.
Okay, well, looks like both players are going to have P and NALAAR.
And Marcio with 2 spells in hand versus Lucas's lands has a bit of an edge here, but it's not huge.
Just talking about Marcio on the other side of the table, and wanting to kind of get over the hump, not get second again here. Lucas's side of the table, it's a little interesting. Luis, he has yet to lose a match of Constructed in this tournament.
11-0 walking into this match, 10-0 in the Swiss, won his semifinal, and now he's in the finals.
And now he's one game away from perfection for Constructed. And he's content to just keep trading, though I will say that if I'm looking at it from Marcio's standpoint, now that he has an artifact on the battlefield, that Scrap Heap Scrounger can come back thanks to the Veteran Motorist being in the graveyard alongside it.
Yeah, and that alongside Heart of Kiran give Marcio a lot more resources than Lucas has.
Yeah, this is Lucas using his mana to the best of his ability, attacking with a Needle Spires here. But Marcio sitting at 20 life.
Marcio has to be extremely happy about that. Paying 4 life so your opponent just does nothing with 5 mana, essentially, is a great deal. And Lucas has nothing better to do, so that's why he did that. But that's just a sign to Marcio that the coast is clear, and Marcio can now really just start to apply pressure.
Things looking fantastic for Marcio Carvalho here in Game 3. He's got Shock, Release the Gremlins, and another Unlicensed Disintegration in his hand.
And he crewed the Heart with the Thopter and the Pia so he could attack with a 3-2 and a 4-4 into a 1-1. So he didn't have to offer the Thopter trade. So little edge there. Marcio saw it, of course.
Marcio. Lucas plays a land and passes to turn back, though this time he does not attack with Needle Spires. He's leaving it back.
Marcio briefly debating whether he wants to unlicensed Disintegration that Thopter, but ultimately that doesn't make as much sense as just attacking and then saving it for Needle Spires.
And there's Unlicensed Disintegration hitting Needle Spires. He does control an artifact that's going to fall down to 10. Then he's going to take 6.
Yeah, Lucas may trade Thopter for Thopter and take 5, falling to 5, but that still leaves him in a very precarious position.
Passes a turn back to Lucas, and he scoops them up. Marcio Carvalho is 1 out of 3 away from being our champion. He's going to feel relief to get that one done. Just getting 3-0'd. Never really feel like you're in it, but now it's 2-1. And things are looking much, much better for Marcio.
I will say that getting 3-0'd in some ways feels better than getting like 3-2'd, because like you're just done. Like if you didn't win, you might as well just be done. But obviously at this point, Marcio would still like to have dreams of a comeback, and it's still very possible. He's just got to win 2 games now.
Let's take a look at Pia NALAAR, by the way. That was a card that we saw from both players.
Yeah, she does a lot for this deck. First of all, she essentially is 3 power, right? Because she comes with a Thopter, so she can crew Heart of Kiran, as is only appropriate, as well as Cultivator's Caravan, if that's what your deck contains. She also can mess with combat very, very well. We've seen multiple games finished by attack with everything, sack my Clue, sack my Thopter, sack my Scrap Heap Scrounger to make it so your creatures can't block. And then in the late game, if you have enough mana, you can spend 1 in a red to start giving your creatures +1/+all your artifact creatures, and that means that Thopters trade up for like a Toolcraft Exemplar, or you just get an extra point in on the Heart, and all of her abilities, matter just enough, and she's just enough stats so that she ends up being an integral part of these decks.
You said Pia and Kiran NALAAR, which is kind of close. This is more like one of their cars, but Heart of Kiran. Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, we saw Heart of Kiran played in 7 of the 8 decks here in the top 8, and that is because it's a 2-mana 4/4 Flying Vigilance. The deck building restrictions are real. You do have to have a lot of 3 power creatures in order to enable Crew 3, but Toolcraft Exemplar and Veteran Motorist do enable that. But once you end up with the Heart of Kiran attacking, it just puts your opponent on a really fast clock. The curve of Exemplar into Heart of Kiran does 3 damage on turn 2 and 7 damage on turn 3, assuming you have a follow-up to Crew the Heart. And that is how a lot of these games have been ending. The additional ability of removing loyalty counters from your Planeswalkers to Crew Heart of Kiran also really does come into play. Gideon can tend to send Heart of Kiran both on the offense and have it play on defense, and sometimes we see Chandra, Torch of Defiance, doing that as well.
Kind of interesting little sub-story here, by the way, with Lucas. He had a little sign on the table when we came back to the game that said, "Thank you, Frank."
Right.
What's the story with that?
So Frank Karsten, who you may know from either the fact that he's in the Hall of Fame or his various stints on coverage, he actually sent a deck list to Pedro Carvalho, one of Lucas's teammates. And if you're wondering why Lucas's deck has a number of cool one-ofs in between deck and sideboard, it is because Frank likes building decks that way. Sent it to Pedro, and Lucas decided the deck looked pretty good. So that was from where the deck came from, or at least a lot of it.
Frank did play in this Pro Tour.
He did. I saw him this weekend.
I don't know how he finished, but he had a pretty good day 1. I know that.
I don't know how many one-ofs he had in his deck.
I'm not sure either, but he does love this Mardu Vehicles deck. He actually played this at the last one, too. He says it got a little better now.
Declared before even Aether Revolt was out that he was just going to play vehicles.
Yeah, it was funny. I did an interview with him yesterday, and he said, I locked it in about 2 months ago. Okay. Seems good.
Frank is a methodical guy, and he decided that his time was best served by doing that.
Frank ended up going 10-6 in the tournament, by the way. Solid finish.
It is a solid finish.
Jeez, that's a tough table. Look at that one. Mike Ron versus Reed Duke, Andrew Cuneo versus Owen Turtenwald, and that's William Huey Jensen versus Rich Hohen. Whoa.
Had a lot of Pro Tour champions and Grand Prix champions sitting at that table.
Yeah, that's not the one that you want to walk up to and go, hey guys, you want to draft?
Or actually it really is, because then you'll learn some things.
No, you can't not, though it might be quick for you. Okay, so let's take a look. It looks like, once again, Lucas is on a mulligan here. I believe he's deciding if he wants to scry to the top or bottom. I may be wrong. Nope, looks like he's got 7.
He was just slow rolling the last card. And this is one of the more reactive hands that we've seen, and it is kind of emblematic of your post-board games where Lucas has released the Gremlins and Sky Sovereign as, and Sky Whaler Shot. So all reactive cards, no early plays, but he decided to keep it, especially on the play, under the assumption that if he can get to the mid to late game, he's got some good tools to work with.
Heart of Kiran there for Lucas.
Not serving
2-drop off the top for Marcio.
Yeah, the Heart of Kiran not serving Lucas all that well right now. He just doesn't have a way to crew it. So Marcio is going to curve out here.
Yeah, he can play a Heart of Kirin if he'd like, and that is what he's going to do. And then the next turn, Scrap Heap Scrounger to get it in the air.
I think we might see the Gremlins being released here.
Nice. He's going to get a 2/2 Gremlin out of the deal from Release the Gremlins and take down that Heart of Kirin. That does take a lot of the wind out of the sails for Marcio's quick start. Scrap Heap Scrounger, but wait, there's more. It's a shock to take out the Gremlin. And that lets the Thraben Inspector attack for just another point of damage. It's already done 2.
So Lucas does have, Sky Sovereign, so he has a good high end here. But yeah, Gideon and Sky Sovereign are both uncastable. He doesn't have a 4th land, so he can cast Shock or Sky Whaler's Shot, but he can't be all that thrilled with killing a Scrap Heap Scrounger regardless of which method he uses.
Exactly.
Still might be worth it. You get to scry off Sky Whaler's Shot, and that's a big incentive when you're really trying to dig for lands here.
Yeah, so he's going to use Sky Whaler's Shot to kill the Scrap Heap Scrounger. Also of note, there's no creatures in the yard yet for Marcio. Takes way less damage here, only dropping down to 17. He did scry a card to the bottom.
Extremely quickly, is too.
Yes.
All right, untapped land is really what Lucas is looking for here.
He drew a NALAAR for the turn. Well, he's going to play that.
Not a bad consolation prize. NALAAR provides some good blockers, and it lets you crew Heart of Kirin. And if Lucas thinks he's on the back foot and has a better late game, he's going to leave all his creatures untapped and kind of see what Marcio does next turn. We're deciding whether he wants to crew or block with Pia, though. Marcio's draw makes it less likely that Lucas is going to get to do that. Fragmentize can go ahead and take out that Heart of Kirin. Marcio deciding whether he wants to draw with the clue first because he's got 2 1-drops in hand that he's pretty sure he's going to play. Or he could leave up mana to use NALAAR to do extra damage, but drawing an extra card is pretty alluring.
Ooh, he found a Gideon. He won't be able to play it this turn, but that's a big draw step there for Marcio Carvalho.
Yeah, Gideon not the best when you're behind, but when you're ahead, Gideon is actually the best. Gideon does a lot to cement your lead.
Fragmentize destroys the Heart of Kirin. NALAAR and token attack. And Lucas looks like he's happy to just trade off everything here. You mentioned it. He knows he needs to hit lands and has some powerful spells in his hand. He wants this game to go as long as possible at this point. He found a land, but it was a concealed courtyard, so it's going to enter the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, and Marcio could have used Shock, but he was happy just saving the Shock and trading off Pias.
4 damage now from from Marcio.
Lucas has to decide whether he wants to use Unlicensed Disintegration this turn or not, and it's also got a Shock.
Well, he can combine those 2 together, though. It looks like no artifact here for Lucas means that Gideon's going to be safe.
Lucas could Shock Gideon and then just hope to draw a 5th land to play Sky Sovereign, but if you don't draw a 5th land, that Shock does not do a whole lot. More of a mana-efficient play is just using Unlicensed Disintegration to kill the Scrap Heap Scrounger or the Night token.
He's thinking about it. He's going to cast the Shock, and he says, okay, fine, I'm just going to kill the Scrap Heap Scrounger. I'm not going to take that high-risk line, but can he find an untapped land here?
This is the turn where he really needs it. He's got Gideon as a backup plan, but that's not necessarily going to work out well because Marcio can Shock the Night token and then plus Gideon to kill Lucas's Gideon.
This one's falling apart very quickly for Lucas because he did not find that land. And there's a Shock on end step, and now he knows that his own Gideon is going to die here. Another Gideon for Marcio Carvalho as well. And Marcio's rocking and rolling now. You can see we've got the advantage bar in the middle to help people who are new to Magic understand who it is that's winning, because sometimes the life totals aren't a descriptor of who's ahead in a game of Magic.
And Marcio here can +1 Gideon if he wants. He can also emblem so he can play 2nd Gideon. He could actually double emblem this turn if that's what he wants to do.
He's going to make 1 emblem and a Knight, attack,
yes,
kill Gideon. Is there a way for Lucas to come out of this even with an untapped land?
No, because even a Sky Sovereign killing one of the Knights, because he can't finish off Gideon, leaves you taking 10, 12 damage next turn, or 11 damage next turn if Marcio attacks. And I think the Toolcraft Exemplar is not going to get there either.
Yeah, that was a pretty meager play here at this late stage. And it does look like Marcio Carvalho is going to be able to even things up. He was down 2-0. And he's on his way to rattling off 2 in a row.
Well, it's only right that we get a Game 5 here in the finals. So Marcio declined to use Gideon to +1 to attack with it, so, and not making an emblem means that he's almost assuredly making a knight post-combat here.
Okay, there's an unlicensed disintegration, but again, no artifact means that the damage isn't going to happen. So 5 damage is going to hit Lucas. He's going to drop down to 8. Marcio's going to make another knight, and he's even got a follow-up play to keep the action flowing for him here. A veteran motorist pushes a land to the bottom, reveals another veteran motorist that he's going to draw next turn. And Lucas is woefully behind in this game. No way out. And he's going to scoop him up. We're going to get a Game 5 here. Marcio Carvalho evening things up against his teammate, Lucas Esper Berthoud.
Alrighty, so Game 5.
1 left, and it's getting a little tense out there for the supporters of these two. Before, when we had one or the other in the feature match area, they'd go nuts. But now I think they're kind of rooting for both.
So and, that cancels each other out. So.
Yeah, so now they've calmed down a little bit out there. Is it going to be Marcio Carvalho looking to avenge that loss at the World Championship and this time take home the trophy, or is it going to be Lucas Esper Berthoud in his first top 8 going 12-0 for the perfect constructed record? Let's take a look at Gideon, ally of ZENDIKAR. How good is Gideon still? This card has been absolutely fantastic in Standard since it was printed. Is that still the case?
It is still the case. The vehicles decks play varying numbers. It's not an auto 4 of in these decks, but Gideon still just does such a fantastic job of pressuring the opponent and making it so when you curve out that your draw is almost unbeatable. He has got a lot of good synergies with vehicles because can make a knight to crew some of the smaller vehicles or add up to crew some of the bigger vehicles, and the emblem lets some of your smaller creatures crew your bigger vehicles, as well as Gideon himself just attacks for a lot of damage, which the vehicles decks tend to want to do.
Players are getting shuffled up for their final game of action here. It will, of course, be the last game that we get to see here from Dublin. It's been a fantastic weekend.
Well, you say that. Let me see. Take a look here.
What are you looking at?
I don't see any card that's capable of sending us to an unintentional draw. Otherwise, we would get a Game 6. But
now that's being thorough.
Look, I'm just trying to cover all my bases here.
There's our feature match area. Just 2 players left in the entire tournament. One's going to go home very happy. One will be sad in the short term, but I'm sure happy in the long term for such a solid finish here in Dublin.
I will predict, despite the fact that the cheering section has kind of died down during the match, when the match is over, there will be cheers. that I think is an easy one. Like one way or another, even if even if all the Brazilians and Portuguese and all the members of Deck's army would rather both these players win somehow, they will be happy that one of them has won.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just going to be cheering. There's going to be singing. It's going to be coordinated. Maybe some type of dance might happen. Yeah, things get very serious out here. We still got the viewers that aren't currently doing a booster draft. And they are.
They were waiting.
They still got the wave coming. You got to love that. And back the other direction, because that's how the wave works. It even continued through. That's great, and some waves from the crowd as well.
Looks like the players are both mulliganing here, is that correct?
Yeah, they're both going to 6. Yeah, might as well be on hard mode for the last game. And fair is fair. If one of them does it, the other one will as well. Again, these players... Marcio plays for Team Deck's Army, where Lucas plays for Team Deck's Third, though they did do a lot of testing together, a lot of cross-testing as well. So we do have effective teammates here in the finals. Lucas hoping to take that trophy home back to Brazil. Marcio, on the other hand, prefer to take a torch horse. God, this has got to be so intense.
I was just going to say, I always enjoy shuffling up before the last game, especially when you're mulliganing, because you're just like, this random assortment of cards that I draw is going to determine such a big, role in how my next, 20 minutes play out, and that's going to determine such a big role in how my next year plays out. So, what cards you get and how you use those cards, what decisions you make. I mean, that's all you can ask for, is to be able to make good decisions. And wow, that's a fine 6. Veteran Motorist and Gideon, plus the lands to cast them both.
Okay, he's not going to argue with that one. Taking a look at the other side of the table here, how does this hand look, Luis?
Much less impressive. It's 2 lands plus P and NALAAR, and
no black mana.
No black mana, so Fatal Push and Unlicensed Disintegration aren't castable. Also, nothing to play early if you don't draw black, and no early drops besides Fatal Push. Sky Sovereign's a good card in the matchup. You don't really want it in your 6-card 2-land opening hand, though. So, is that keepable? Yes, I think it's likely better than a 5, though it is close. Marcio can't be happy about that hand, though.
All right, we are underway. Marcio did keep that hand. Lucas gets the advantage of being on the play here in this last game and casting the Veteran Motorist.
This draw step's huge for Marcio. If he doesn't draw a card to play or a black mana, then he's just immediately going to be behind. And Lucas left both on top.
Oh, wow.
All right.
No shock, of course. He did find a card to play, and that actually does block the Veteran Motorist as
Thraben
well.
Inspector was very good for Marcio there. He just needed to get something on the board, because he has Pia next turn, and she's going to help quite a bit. But without having a play there, he would just be a lot further behind than if he missed.
Okay, but a really good start for Lucas as well. 2/2 drops back-to-back here. He's got Heart of Kirin, and you've got to say the advantage lies with Lucas here in the early stages, but this is not over yet.
No, that could change really quickly if Marcio draws like a Spire of Industry in order to start casting his black spells, but as it stands, he can't stop Heart of Kirin from attacking for 5 a turn. And Gideon's about to come out too, which can make a knight and remove a loyalty counter to animate Heart of Kirin. So Lucas is in pretty good shape right now. Also, if Lucas gets to 5 mana, next turn, he can cast Release the Gremlins for 2, killing the Clue token and the Thopter if they're both still around, making 2 Gremlins, which would be a huge swing as well. There's also some merit to Lucas crewing with just a loyalty counter first, just to leave Veteran Motorist and the Knight token untapped as well, just to have the max number of potential blockers, just to protect Gideon.
See, Lucas is going to go ahead and just set his hand down for a moment here.
This is a big
take
turn.
a deep breath. Yeah,
So
this is the type of thing that you do not want to make a mistake on.
Lucas has 3 spells in his hand. He has 2 removal spells in Unlicensed Disintegration and Release the Gremlins. But Gideon's really what he's going to want to play here on 4 mana. Just slam the powerful Planeswalker. The question is, what do you do from there? You can make an emblem, but that doesn't sound as appealing when you effectively only have 1 creature in play because the Heart of Kirin is getting crewed right now by the Veteran Motorist. Looks like Lucas is going to wait for a safer opportunity to play Gideon, though. Okay,
he's actually going to clear the way out a little bit with Unlicensed Disintegration, reducing Marcio's ability to crack back and smash in there for 5 damage. So a total of 8 for the turn leaves Marcio Carvalho at 12. What did Ooh.
He drew neither hub, which that's a good draw for Marcio. He only gets to cast 1 black spell, but getting to cast a Fatal Push on Heart of Kirin or an Unlicensed Disintegration seems like it's going to help him a lot because Lucas doesn't have tons of threats here.
Pass back to Lucas.
And that also bridges the gap. It gets Marcio that much closer to casting a Sky Sovereign. So one way that this goes very right for Lucas is if he doesn't cast Release the Gremlins until after Marcio casts Sky Sovereign. He might be tempted to Release the Gremlins for 2 here, though. But it looks like he's just going to run the Gideon.
He's convinced that the way has been cleared significantly, so he's going to play Gideon, ally of ZENDIKAR. Now, one card he's going to have in mind for sure is Unlicensed Disintegration here, right? Remember, there's that Thopter sitting there, and look, he's not even going to attack at all this turn.
Yeah, he's not going to attack with the Heart of Kirin because he wants to play around Unlicensed Disintegration. He doesn't want to run Heart of Kirin into that.
Now what happens if Marcio just... Well, it looks like he's not going to. So he's just going to sacrifice his clue. And draw his card for the turn. Wow, Chandra's making an appearance here. That was a Chandra Torch of Defiance off the top of the library from Marcio Carvalho.
Interesting.
Not one we expected to see out of the sideboard. In fact, haven't seen yet. So Thopter is going to attack Gideon. And this is not going to turn out well for Lucas at all, as the Thopter is going to get through, and Unlicensed Disintegration is going to redirect 3 damage to Gideon. That's a total of 4, and Gideon's gone.
And the way that all played out, we've seen a couple times here, and I really have to think that some of these players want to just +1 their Gideon so they don't get sniped by that Thopter token into Unlicensed Disintegration.
This is the 3rd time that we've seen it play out in that exact same way. And whoa, has the tide turned back towards Marcio Carvalho here, or what? This is now Lucas saying, well, the best thing I can do is just get in a big attack this turn, and he's actually firing up Needle Spires here. Marcio's going to chump block the Needle Spires to save 4 damage, take 2, and all Lucas can do is play a Plains.
On the other hand, if Marcio does play Sky Sovereign this turn, then Lucas has a devastating release of Gremlins next turn.
Oh, he certainly does, and that's exactly what happened here. Marcio Carvalho plays Sky Sovereign Console Flagship, takes down the Knight, but here we go. Gremlins have been released, take down both of your threats, and he's going to turn them into threats of his own. That even allows him to attack for 3 here. There we go. Attack for 3, and he had a Toolcraft Exemplar. Bang! Things sliding right back in Lucas's direction. What a swingy game we've got here.
And Marcio missed on black mana. That Aether Hub could cast one of his black spells. He already cast it. He doesn't have any energy. He's got 2 black spells in hand. He's got a Chandra that he can play, but Chandra's just going to trade for a Veteran Motorist, essentially. Marcio is actually just looking to try to hit something. And
that's going to do it. Lucas Esper Berthoud is your champion. He puts his hand on his face. The perfect 12-0 constructed record. He did not lose a single match. He is truly the king of Mardu vehicles, and he showed that here today. Congratulations to you, Lucas Esper Berthoud from Team Dex Third.
E o Gremlin, tu tinhas na mão?
And the players are kind of pointing to the cards like, if I didn't have this, I wouldn't have won, or you only needed black mana, that kind of thing. And in the end of the day, it was going to go to one of these 2 Dex teams. It ended up being Dex Third that takes the thing down, and a sportsmanship high 5 to the end. And wow, it had to be that way, right? It just had to end that way, where it like swung in one direction, then back the other, and then of course in the end it was ended up being Lucas, and he is our champion. You know, this is only his, I think it's his 5th Pro Tour, and boom, he's a Pro Tour champion just like that. He's going to put his team on the map, Team Dex Third. I'm sure they're going to mob him. In fact, I can see that they're doing that right now. And now he gets to look forward to being qualified for the Pro Tours, for running it up for the rest of the season, for maybe putting together a fantastic run.
Going to be playing at Worlds in Boston end of the year, since the Pro Tour champion gets an invite.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that, you know, winning a Pro Tour is the way to go if you're a pro player, because it opens up all of these doors for you. And we promised dancing and singing, and boy, do we have it here, Luis. Check that out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what, these guys know how to celebrate. What a fun way to end the tournament. You can see the teammates and friends of Lucas all surrounding him, giving him pats on the back. A big hug from Thiago Saporito there in the middle, as well as they all reach in and tell him how proud they are of his great achievement here. 12-0 with Mardu vehicles. This guy knows how to fire up the car and go for a ride, doesn't he?
Yeah, it took some gremlins to get him across the finish line, but you know, he got there nonetheless.
He did. All right, that is going to do it for our coverage here from the booth. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's send it back to the news desk and Rich Hagan.
Just look at that. You're looking at your Pro Tour champion, Lucas Esper Berthoud, there in the Dex Third shirt, and plenty of players around there. Looking at Marcio Carvalho as well. It's a pretty lonely place when you lose the final, and BDM, that's happened twice now to Marcio in the last 6 months.
I understand that that's heartbreaking, but Marcio Carvalho well on the way to being re-qualified for Worlds next year, and having an amazing season, from Draft Master now to a Pro Tour finalist. But Lucas Berthoud released the Gremlins. What a swingy game that was, Ian Duke. That game went back and forth, and we were like, basically when the game starts to swing in one direction, if we're not all at the desk, someone will come up the stairs to the balcony and make their way over, because we need to be ready at the desk. And it looked like it was swinging Marcio's way, and Ian made his way up here.
Yeah.
And by the time you got up here, it changed.
We're up here watching the monitor. I have no sound, at least. Maybe you guys do. But so I'm watching the advantage bar to tell who's winning or whatever. I see it swinging back and forth each turn, right? So pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, and release the Gremlins. That we talked about that card a lot as a Octabi Orangutan, right? A 2/2 for 3 mana that kills an artifact. But there we actually got to see, the ceiling of the card, where you get to take out 2 artifacts, make 2 Gremlins, and completely devastate Marcio's board and seal the victory for Lucas.
It's incredibly unusual for a player to dominate Standard in such a way.
Yes.
Not least because the simple math of the tournament says that if you only go 3-3 in Limited, you have to win every single constructed round.
I do an article after every Pro Tour where I talk to players who finish 9th through 16th. Those players will often have gone 9-1 in Constructed, 8-2 in Constructed, 7-3 in Constructed, and they consider those to be amazing Constructed results. They're like, I had a great tournament. I really nailed this format. 7-3.
Yeah, absolutely.
12
and this
and
is 12-0.
12-0.
So we're not too far away from the award ceremony here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. You'll hear from the champion Lucas Esper Berthoud in the company of Brian David Marshall in just a little bit. But obviously the top 8 was dominated by Mardu vehicles. The thing about Magic keeps on moving. Next week there's a Grand Prix in Pittsburgh, and there I don't think this standard format's going to look anything like what we've seen today. BDM, you've been doing a little bit of research into some of the players a little bit further down.
Well, sure. I talked about that 9th through 16th piece that I do. I like to look through the standard decks on the website. There'll be all the decks that went 7-3, 8-2, 9-1, and you can take a look at those and see. Because sometimes you can have a 2-4 draft record, right? Go undefeated in standard and miss the top 8.
That's where we found Pedro Carvalho's thing in the ice deck.
9-1, right? The thing in the ice deck. So let's start. A player who went 8-2 in standard. Brad Nelson, coming off of another top 16 Pro Tour finish. Great job by Brad, and Brad's super happy with himself. He played Black Green Constrictor, and now this may sound like every other deck, that we've seen early on day one, but he took a different approach to this, and there's a couple cards in here that we haven't seen in other black green lists necessarily. Ian, what is Glint Sleeve Siphoner adding into this equation?
So this is one of the powerful new cards from Aether Revolt. It was played a lot in the first couple weeks of this format as players were testing out the new cards and quickly identified this as a really strong one here. It's a 2/1 creature, lets you gain energy when it enters the battlefield or attacks, and you can spend energy to draw cards. Has menace as well. So it's a great 2-drop, a great way to leverage that card advantage, excellent in mirror matches. The one problem with it is it's very susceptible to opposing walking ballistas, which is one of the reasons why it was cut out of a lot of the decks in the second and third weeks of the format leading up to the Pro Tour here.
And Brad Nelson, I think, expecting a much more control-heavy format.
Yes.
And this was why he was able to bring this back in. Also, a card that's in his list from Kaladesh that we haven't seen a lot of in standard necessarily. Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
I love that card so much.
Yes, it's one of my favorite cards. The card I actually designed for Kaladesh
awesome.
myself, and it's just awesome. It's just pure value, right? Trades off no matter how big your opponent's creature is because of the Death Touch. Gets you a little bit of extra value by looking at the top of their library. In mirror matches, it's great because you get to steal a card from them, and it's a card that might also be in your own deck as well, so maybe you have synergy with it. The other card I really like in the list, wanted to call out, is Aether Sphere Harvester. Another card that's great defending yourself when you're behind, especially against those aggressive Mardu vehicles decks.
That was another card that Brad actually pointed out. He's like, if you want to, he's like, you can play around their fatal push, where you make them have to jump through hoops to use it. They have to do something on their turn, like sacrifice an Evolving Wilds or do something that you can sort of see coming to Fatal Push it. And it also just really is a great tool to hold off the Heart of Kirin.
Indeed, and again, that key 5 toughness there lives through Grasp, lives through Heart of Kirin battles. Difficult to Fatal Push, although not impossible. Yeah, just a really resilient blocker.
Okay, who's next?
Let's talk about Lucas Blahan's Jeskai control deck. That was a kind of an interesting deck, just kind of an interesting take on the format. He played Jeskai, and almost all the Jeskai decks we've seen have been followed by Jeskai Copycat. This is not the case here.
Yeah, Lucas Blahan really preying on the fear of the environment, right? Playing the copycatless copycat control in some ways. Pure Jeskai control really well set up to beat the black-green decks with Fumigate, and Torrential Gearhulk just being a heavy hitter that can close out the games there, not devoting any slots to the nonsense, we'll call it, in the form of Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian.
So Ian, if you're looking at this kind of list and thinking, yes, I like to play this kind of thing, we watch...
like yourself?
Like me, for example. We certainly saw Lucas Blahan get run over by some of the vehicles decks. How does this deck adjust to a metagame that seems to be as fast as it is?
I actually think this deck is pretty well positioned. If I was going to play in the upcoming GP, I'd be considering a deck like this. However, you do have to metagame it against the Mardu vehicles decks. You want to go lower down on the curve. You want to play more cheap removal, more shocks, more points of interaction early in the game, and then just try to leverage the power of Torrential Gearhulk to close out the game quickly and just get a little extra, 1-2 punch out of your removal spells.
Yeah, absolutely. And something to consider, if you feel like you've got your deck tuned correctly in the main deck, maybe you can shave a little sideboard room and put the combo of Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian into your sideboard, and have the option to really pivot when your opponent maybe takes out the things that they've taken out.
And speaking of sideboards, real quick, this is another deck that can play Release the Gremlins, right?
Right.
If you want to have access to that post-sideboard against the vehicle decks.
Neat stuff.
Federico Del Basso is another player playing Black-Green Constrictor. We see the Glint Sleeve Siphoner and Bristling Hydra in his list. But
It's nice to see Bristling Hydra.
Yeah, Bristling Hydra is definitely the card that was very interesting there to me. You also see Blossoming Defense, 3 of those. But let's keep moving along and see what else we have going on here. This is another control deck coming up. Taro Inui playing Blue-Red Control. And this is a Dynavolt Tower deck, 2 Dynavolt Towers, 4 Torrential Gearhulks. That's really how this deck wins. And then it is just...
How many counter spells?
Is that enough instance for me to interest you in playing a deck,
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
I can totally get behind Torrential Gearhulking a confirmed suspicions. That, my friends, is value.
That's value right there. That does seem like a really interesting deck. But we also had Martin User come in to talk to us, and he's actually kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Absolutely.
But what a great weekend for Martin.
Yeah, Martin got to his 3rd Pro Tour top 8, first in a very long time, and he was playing a Jund Energy aggro deck. He did a deck tech with Luis Scott Vargas. He talked about this deck, and there you get a look at it. Greenbelt Rampager was really the big exciting card in this deck. One of the things we've seen, you see Heart of Kirin which is such a Mardu vehicle staple. This is still very much a vehicles deck, actually, with 5 vehicles. But Greenbelt Rampager really capable of crewing Heart of Kirin and even giving it a sort of pseudo-vigilance. I mean, not pseudo, it has vigilance, but I mean the ability to play offense and defense, turning Heart of Kirin into a 2-way player.
Normally you don't think of elephants as flexible, but this card has a lot of tricks that it can pull.
This deck, Ian, is potentially very interesting in terms of the standard metagame moving forward, because notwithstanding Martin User's loss in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important thing about it. He was 4-1 against Mardu vehicles and felt like he had good matchups against all the non-Sagitalics in the top 8.
Yeah, I believe it. Absolutely.
All right, well, it is time for the award ceremony here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the feature match here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. What a fast and exciting top 8 it was. It is now time to present our champion from Brazil, Lucas Esper Berthoud. Lucas, congratulations. You got to be all adrenaline right now. What was it like going into that last game against Marcio?
Well, playing against Marcio is always tough. He's a great player. Went to game 5, it was crazy. But today I was just shuffling the cards and having fun. I was playing much better than I was yesterday, and I was feeling good about it.
You know, you went perfect constructed at this Pro Tour. 12-0, you did not lose a match. How did you get so good at playing this Mardu vehicle stack?
Now, honestly, the list is insane. We had a really, really good sideboard for the field, and it all worked out in the end.
I'm preparing myself for this, Lucas. Who do you want to thank from your Dex testing team?
Okay, so first of all, would like to thank Frank Karsten for the list. He's a genius. Thanks for all the work you put into it. And then, second of all, I'd like to thank all of those guys.
Here comes the Dex Army and Dex third testing teams for him. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, your champion, Lucas Esper Berthoud.